The Cleveland Cavaliers select Evan Mobley.
Has been a historical franchise in this league for years.
We have a trade to announce. The Boston Celtics select Jason Tatum.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Before we get into everything right now, I would like to remind you to subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel and turn on notifications. We are so blown away by the growth that we've seen here on this channel and so appreciative, and we would certainly love to see you subscribe if you're not subscribed already and keep this thing rolling. So make sure you do that. Joining me as always is Keith Smith. You can find him at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me at Trevor_Lane. Okay, let's kick things off with Myles Turner. Myles Turner, a name that's out there. I'd be surprised at this point just because there's been so much buzz if he isn't moved by the trade deadline. Keith, the latest rumor linking him to the Minnesota Timberwolves? A little bit surprised here by that landing spot.
Yeah, it did surprise me too. Darren Wolfson, who's a reporter out of Minnesota, covers the Wolves. He mentioned that they have talked about acquiring Myles Turner. Now, you look at it and you say, it kind of makes some sense, I guess. Put a shot blocker next to Cat, and the guy who can play with some range. I've repeatedly said Turner is very plug and play for just about any team. But you do start to wonder, like, what does that really do for you if you're Minnesota? Is that a big enough upgrade? I know this sounds weird to say, but over Jared Vanderbilt and Naz Reid is the other center, as well as Jaden McDaniels, who's also played quite a bit. Like, what are we doing? Is he the exact ideal fit with Towns? You could get into kind of trouble there trying to defend on the perimeter with those two. So I guess it makes some sense just to see there. I do wonder, is that one where maybe that's more of a 3-team and he doesn't end up in Minnesota and he's routed somewhere else. But I'm with what you said off the jump. I don't think Myles Turner is a Pacer a month from now. I'd be very, very surprised. They just played Boston. It's the first of a home-and-home set. The Celtics beat them on Monday night. They're going to play again on Wednesday in Indiana. He was not part of the closing lineup in either half for the Pacers and had really very little role when he was out there. And that's something he was open about. Probably was that about a month or so ago with Jared Weiss of The Athletic. He said, hey, I'm open to going somewhere and having a bigger role and being a bigger part of things. So I just adding it all together. I'll be shocked if he's with the Pacers a month from now.
So here's the thing with Myles Turner, and I've been digging into him a bit for Lakers Nation because, he's a name that's out there that's been connected to the Lakers. Is he really a three-point threat or not? He shot 42% from deep in November, and then that dropped to 32% in December, and he's like in the 20s in January. He was 0 for 4 last night against the Boston Celtics, only played 23 minutes, 3 rebounds. He's not a massive threat rebounding, and I like Myles Turner a lot. He's leading the NBA in block shots. I think he is a guy that teams can use, but your question becomes, yes, you can use him, but do you want to pay him $18 million? Do you want to allocate that much in terms of resources towards essentially a stretch 5? Is that what you want to do? Particularly knowing that for a lot of teams in the NBA right now, you're not running a center as in part of your closing lineups. And if you're the Wolves in particular, do you want to commit, and this is the same question for the Lakers, do you want to commit to playing big with Karl Anthony Towns next to Myles Turner for the majority of your minutes? Because that's what you're doing. If you're going to pay that $18 million for Myles Turner, you're going to play big there. And I think the key for the Wolves has been more playing Towns as your 5 and not your 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've become semi-interchangeable.
Sure.
Towns is very clear is a far more versatile offensive game than Turner does, but you can, one can play inside, one can play outside, and reverse him. Probably Towns more as the inside because he can post up, where Turner has shown no ability to do that. He's basically a roll man, a diver off others' penetration and things like that. So yeah, that's your challenge. I mean, half of his shots come from more than half, or I guess it's about half come from behind the arc now, and that's fine. but he doesn't shoot it at an elite level. I think people have this sense of like he is like a shot blocker like Rudy Gobert who shoots it like Channing Frye. And
good reference, Channing Frye.
But he's not, right? That's the
No.
challenge. Channing Frye was one of the best shooting bigs the game's ever seen.
Right.
He shoots it well. I don't want to take that away from him, but he's always been a little overrated as a shooter, in my opinion. Does not really rebound all that good for a guy of his size. And then the blocks are good because his blocks are not like, remember several years ago, Hassan Whiteside was like leading the league, but it was because he was chasing blocks all over the place, continually out of position. Turner mostly gets them as a help guy, as a guy who could clean up for others. Domantas Sabonis is very ground bound, so he's the guy who comes over quite a bit. I mean, led the league last year at 3.4 per game. So this is real. He's actually led the league 2 out of the last 3 seasons and is leading it this year. So if that continues, it'll be 3 or 4 years. And again, these are not just going out and chasing these blocks all over the place.
He's a good shot blocker.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm with you. I have to really wonder where you're trying to go. If this is what you want to do, if you're going to acquire him, you better, and especially where he's chirping about wanting a bigger role and things like that, that worries me to some extent. I think it's probably more of, hey, send me somewhere where we're winning and competing and contending for, the finals or even deep playoff runs. That'll probably change a lot as far as needing a bigger role. But yeah, I mean, he's a 7-footer who averages 2.5 free throws a game. That's a little tough for me.
And I stand corrected. He's actually shooting 19% as of now in January, since shooting 0 for 4 against. I know, small sample size. We're we're not even halfway through January, so take that.
But he's down to 34.9% on the year.
Right,
that's not an elite level guy like people make him out to be.
And here's the thing: if that drops a little bit, if that gets, say it's 32%, the goodbye spacing, right? That's that you hit a point where teams stop caring if you're behind the 3-point line, and Turner is close enough to that to where you at least have to factor that into the decision. Now, again, we sound like we just hate Myles Turner, and we really don't. I really do like Myles Turner. I think that as a shot blocker, he's something special there, but I just question the fit here. There is another connection here between the Wolves and the Pacers. Both teams supposedly in the running for Ben Simmons. Is it possible they're just comparing notes? Hey, you guys are offering this. We could offer that. Hey, maybe if this doesn't work out, the two of us can work something out here. I guess let's finish with this. Let's say the Wolves decide this is the path we want to go down, right? Issues be damned. This is the path we want to go down. We want Myles Turner. What does their offer look like?
Yeah, it's probably going to be centered around Malik Beasley as the main guy in there. Just that's the one that makes sense the most. And maybe you throw one of those kids, McDaniels or Vanderbilt, along with them. I would think Beasley for Turner, to me, starts to be somewhat close to fair value when you factor in the kind of weird fit in Minnesota. So I think that's the way. The bigger thing for me is good for the Wolves for basically saying, hey, we want this playoff spot. We're going after it. So I think that is the bigger takeaway for me, is that they are clearly open to, okay, we're going to go, do what we can. They are right now 20-20 and in 8th in the West. So that's in the play in, but they're only a couple games out of moving up to the 5th seed. So that's not that's we're getting into rare territory for the Minnesota Timberwolves approaching the midseason here. So that's great. I mean, they've won 4 in a row. They're getting back to healthy and starting to play pretty good ball.
Kind of like a Cavs West light.
Yeah.
In that they haven't made the playoffs in a bit. It would mean a lot for them to be there, to get in there, especially as like kind of a surprise team. The Cavs obviously had a solid run with LeBron. That wasn't all that long ago, but still, they're a surprise that they're at where they're at right now. The Wolves, kind of a similar situation where they're doing a little bit better than we would have expected. And I think it would mean a lot to that franchise to get into the playoffs. So maybe there's that added incentive of, it's been a long time. Let's get there. Let's get this done. If we can add some pieces right now, let's go do it.
And you have that pressure of every year you don't make it is another year that it all amplifies around get Karl Anthony Towns out of Minnesota. get him to somewhere where he has a chance to win. And that's what you're trying to avoid if you're the Wolves. That's why just getting into the play-in and then maybe into the playoffs, that buys you at least another year of, all right, we took steps forward. Let's make some moves. Let's see where we can get to. So yeah, I think there's, it's good to see they're kind of buying in here because I think they have to.
Yeah. Yep. Let's get to another big man. Deandre Ayton. Our buddy Eric Pincus said that the Pistons could be a team that might go after Deandre Ayton this summer. I'll say that as a restricted free agent, I don't see him actually leaving Phoenix. I think the Suns match. But this is also the scenario that you specifically wanted to avoid if you were the Phoenix Suns, and why we were critical of the Suns for not just getting a deal done with Ayton this past offseason. They didn't want to give him the money that he wanted. And here we are now. If you get another team that goes out there, throws him this big offer, throws him this max deal, does everything they can to make the deal as difficult to match as possible, then you're worse off from the Phoenix Suns perspective. So this is not good news for the Suns.
Yeah, because what you could be facing here for the Suns is it's the kind of the Gordon Hayward conundrum of a team makes him an offer sheet and he signs that. Then maybe what happens is in 3 years from now, he's opting out and leaving, or you're 2 years into the deal and you're like, well, he's only got 1 sure year left. Maybe we should trade him already. It sounds like going all the way back to all the reporting around it was he wanted the 5-year max and they didn't want to give him the 5th year. And that's where they held. And I get it, right? Draw your line where you need to. Just know what the potential issues are down the line. And one of those potential issues may be we're going to lose this guy at some point here. And the Pistons are in a position where that's a position of need for them. That's the one spot where they don't have Isaiah Stewart is good, but Isaiah Stewart probably looks even better as a 20 to 25 minute a night big man off the bench than he does as a starter. You could bring Ayton in, let Ayton be kind of there's our guy. There's now our starting 5 along with Cade Cunningham. Oh shoot. I just had my ring light slipped, so hopefully it'll hold still. Man, that was crazy.
The basketball gods don't want Ayton in Detroit.
That's it. Apparently they do not want him in Detroit. So anyway, after that near disaster, you are in a position where if you're Detroit, why not? Right? Because at worst, the Suns match and you still have all that cap space and you go move it in a different direction. So it does make things a little more difficult for Phoenix if that's where you want to go, because it's just you've made this situation now less clean than it was months ago. Now, they still can come to an agreement with him before anybody else can do anything and get him signed and lock him in, and then off they go. They have his match rates. I'm with you. I'll be very surprised if he's playing for another team next season. But you're now open. The path is now open for down the line for that to happen.
If you're the Suns, would you rather pay Ayton a max and have 5 years set, no player options, or would you rather match a deal that's a 4-year deal and he can get out in 3, and then realistically in 2 you're thinking about trading him? What's your preferred option there?
Yeah, there's the first one. But I like DeAndre Ayton. I thought when it looked like the Suns were going to win the finals, Ayton was a big part of why they would have won the finals. And I think you lock him up with Devin Booker. Now you have your younger core locked up as Chris Paul, whenever it happens, eventually ages out and moves along. You now have that there it is. So you've got the best of both worlds now, and you have things locked up in the future. I worry about it. Now, I always say with restricted free agents and when guys don't get an extension, nobody knows everything about them better than their current team. Those teams know their medical better than everybody else does. They know what their work ethic is like, what they project for their production to be with the rest of the roster, all that stuff. So maybe the Suns have very valid reasons to move on, but I don't know. From what we've shown now, he's also not one of those centers that's going to get played off the floor where all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, but now we close the games with a $30 million on the bench. He's not that kind of guy. He can be out there all the way for you.
Well, and if you're the Suns, you have to be worried about, like you said, Gordon Hayward, whenever he's a free agent next. Does this stick in his mind? Does he remember, hey, this team didn't take care of me. This team made me go sign with somebody else, right? And it only takes one. It takes, if it's the Pistons, it could be anybody. It takes one team to give him that offer, and next thing you know, you're the Suns, your leverage is gone, and you've got a guy who's hitting free agency earlier than you wanted to, that is supposed to be a building block long term, and that's just, that's not the scenario that you want to be in. From the Pistons side, if it works and somehow the Suns say, oh, never mind, we don't want Ayton, cool, then you're building around Cade Cunningham and Deandre Ayton long term, and that looks pretty good. So I get why the Pistons would want to do this. For the Suns, this is the last thing that they wanted to hear.
Yeah, completely agree.
All right, let's get into your Orlando Magic. And I say your because of geographic location, but the front office got a nice long extension. And Keith, you said before we went on the air here that you want to get into some of the ramifications of that and what this really means. So let's dive into that.
Yeah, so Jeff Weltman and John Hammond both extended through the 25-26 season. Front office contracts often work the same way as coach deals do, where that last year is kind of the team option. It's just in that case, it's either the team president, not the president of the basketball ops, but the actual president or directly the owner who's deciding on that option versus the front office deciding on for. But in Orlando, about a year ago, NBA feel-wise, not exactly a year ago calendar-wise, because we're off a little bit because of the adjusted calendar. But at last season's trade deadline, they said, we're done. This group has gone as far as it's going to go. And off went Vucevic, off went Gordon, off went Fournier. I jokingly have said several times, Terrence Ross was like the embodiment of the Will Smith meme, where he was left in the empty room looking around at everything being gone. But now what's happened is, had they not shown or done well in the draft or in those trade packages or whatever, you might have had the Magic, which we've been down this path before here in Orlando, of, all right, let's get rid of these guys, let's get new blood in here, and let's really try to get this thing moving forward. What the Magic have done with this is they're now in this rebuild for the long haul and for however long it takes. And I believe very much Weltman and Hammond were brought in to do this originally, and then the team was just better than anybody thought 2 years ago. And then I guess 3 seasons ago now. And then 2 seasons ago, they were pretty good again in the bubble and were a playoff team. And it was very hard after years and years and years of being awful post-Dwight Howard to tell the fans, not that we don't care about making the playoffs at all. We're going to scrap this group. So what ended up happening was, all right, let's do what we need to, but they did it in smart ways. They re-signed those guys to good tradable contracts. How do I know that? They all get traded. That's how I know they were good tradable contracts. They all get traded for good returns too. So now where you're left is, all right, where do the Magic go from here? Now we know they're committed to the rebuild. So if you're Weltman and Hammond, you feel really good about, we can trade Terrence Ross at this offseason, at this trade deadline, because whatever we get for him, we'll be able to make those picks or develop those players or whatever. We can move Gary Harris and maybe take on a questionable salary if we need to, because we'll fit that into how we build this thing moving forward. Robin Lopez, not going to be a massive return, but we can move him because whatever young player picks we'll get. Even if we want to flip it a little further, they start looking at it and saying, all right, we've got Fultz under contract. We've got Isaac under contract, but we really like Franz Wagner. We really like Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, and those guys. Maybe you could look to trade one of those guys. Those avenues are now open, where if you had this front office just kind of sitting there without it being, certain that they were going to be the ones to kind of complete whatever this rebuild cycle is, now that they've got that certainty, that opens them up to do other things. And I think that's really important for a franchise like Orlando that's trying to figure their way back from this. And I'll also say, maybe I'm just being super optimistic because I want the team where I most often go to games to be good and competitive and back to the playoffs. I don't think, if you look at it, their record is horrible, but I don't think they're as far off as it maybe seems, because they've got a lot of good young players, and a couple of them in Isaac and Fultz haven't even played yet. So you start putting those guys together, they build together a competent defensive group, which looks like it could happen. You might see Orlando back they might be one of these teams that takes a Cavs-like jump, where it's from the bottom of the standings to being a potential playoff team, and then you build on it from there.
Keith, if that happens, say next season, we are going to bookmark this episode or something and go back, because as of this moment, the Orlando Magic are dead last in the NBA. and they are a minus 9.2, which is also worst in the NBA in point differential. So this is the bottom of the barrel team, but you're saying that there is some life here. There's something here to this team that could build fairly quickly. And you mentioned players out with injuries. So that's absolutely true. And I also think locking in the front office is important, not just because, yes, you believe in these guys to be the guys to move forward, but it also sends a message to the young players, to the trades that they make, that, hey, this is something we're committed to, at least for the next few years, which in NBA terms, that's a lifetime, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, you've also told now any free agents and their agencies, hey, we're here. So if you sign, like, we're here. You're not signing a contract with Jeff Weltman and John Hammond and we're gone in a year and now your guy's in limbo. If we sign you, we're signing you because we believe in you. We want to bring you in, and off we go from there. And that I think gets overlooked a lot with guys. And the reality is Orlando has always done fairly well in free agency. They've been able to attract free agents throughout their history. Sometimes it's the top end guys, like when they get Grant Hill and Tracy McGrady. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, beautiful weather year round, right? Those guys really like that. Yeah, didn't know Tim Duncan, but that's a whole other story. Yeah. But the beautiful weather, no state taxes, here in Orlando, in Florida, in Orlando, obviously. And it's a place where a lot of guys live in the off season. A lot of guys train here regularly. There's a lot of things here that people look at and say, yeah, that's a pretty attractive place. And if I'm not saying they're going to be out there going after the best of the best free agents in the next couple of years, but you get into those second, third tier guys when they've got all kinds of cap space and flexibility, and look at it and saying, man, they've got some good young pieces. That's a great spot to make a Jeremy Grant like acquisition, where it's, I'm going to come and I'll be the guy who helps lift them. I help get that team to the next level. So I'm not saying they're good, because they're certainly not. I'm just saying, if you look a little bit deeper, this team's not as far away as they maybe seem just record-wise right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think the long-term upside is there. And that's why you saw the Magic make the moves that they did, was to give themselves that future and not kind of be stuck in treadmill zone, which frankly is kind of where they were. They were seen as kind of this treadmill team that was good, but not quite good enough. And they were never going to be bad enough to get the pick that they needed, and things of that nature. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes moving forward. How you evaluate this team obviously completely changes after all the moves that they made. How you evaluate this front office changes. It's not about winning games right now. It's about all the other moves that they make. So this doesn't mean that this management group can just kick the can down the road and continually sell hope and just acquire picks and never have it turn into something. I think you just evaluate them differently than teams that are contending and trying to win right now. And so that's what we're going to see from this team moving forward, is what can they do to build, to add assets, even if they're maybe not a long-term fit. What can they do to build this thing up from the ground up? And this is a vote of confidence that this front office can indeed accomplish that. And hopefully by the time these contracts are up, you've got a contender potentially in Orlando.
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt.
All right, everybody. I think that about wraps things up for today, unless we've had any other Woj bombs or Shams.
Doesn't look like it.
Anything like that coming out in.
I just need to put my desk back together apparently now. So yeah.
But thank you everybody for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Don't forget to turn on those notifications as well. If you listen to the podcast version of this, follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Doesn't matter. Make sure you follow us there as well. Appreciate it, everybody. Till next time, stay safe and see ya.